You mentioned also Bruce the Marsico, and my understanding is that his main idea is that happiness is our true nature, and that when we experience something unpleasant, we start to give ourselves reasons to why we should be unhappy. So in a way, we're like layering or constructing misery over happiness. And I feel like that's also like a Buddhist idea. I feel like that's kind of like something in Buddhism, that it's like, oh, happiness is intrinsic, like we're intrinsically happiness and we create our own kind of unhappiness. But yeah, maybe you could speak a little bit more to his philosophy. And yeah.
Sure. So one thing from a lineage standpoint, Bruce Marsko's lineage is in some sense Western existentialism and also American pragmatism, like William James. And it is not a Westernization of Buddhist philosophy or Westernization of any Eastern philosophy. One of my I take a little digression here. One of my Dzogchen teachers, not Charlie, someone a different one, is highly critical of Vajrayana and considers Dzogchen to have merely flowered in that context. And Bruce DeMarco is the closest Western writer who comes from a purely Western lineage, in my opinion, to the Dzogchen, I'll call it, view. Anyway, what is this view? It is that, yes, that happiness is intrinsic, but what is happiness? So happiness in a sense is that it is okay to be wanting and feeling whatever you're wanting and feeling. The end. So, or more generally, they said happiness is defined by any person. So the question wasn't really about, his question really wasn't about happiness, but unhappiness. How does unhappiness happen? Because happiness as the intrinsic situation isn't really an interesting question. Yeah, it happens. The question is, how does unhappiness happen? Why do we get this unhappiness? And the fundamental answer was, unhappiness is merely, I'll say merely, the belief that there are conditions required for our happiness. The truth is there are no conditions required. And so the release of unhappiness is merely the release of the belief that there are conditions required for happiness. I'll pause there and see if you have any questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you shared another article of somebody like wrote out the method, and like I've followed some of that stuff in my own life. Like when I was feeling unhappy or something was popping up, and it's interesting, but it does remind me a lot of CBT, like cognitive behavioral therapy, like challenging beliefs, challenging that you need to be unhappy. Like, do you need to be unhappy?
I'm going to distinguish it from CBT in that CBT is, in my understanding, is looking for an optimal frame. It's something like you have a not useful perspective on things. It's going to challenge that and probably to replace it, though, with a better perspective. The option method does not aim to replace any frame with a better frame or any understanding with a better understanding. It has no opinion on any belief that is not problematic for a given individual. It's only there to help bust or pop beliefs on that one's happiness is conditioned, and then what comes from that is whatever comes from that. I can give you a dramatic contrast that's more concrete. If, let's say, someone was worried that they had fantasies of killing their neighbor, cognitive behavioral therapy, I believe, might be try to get them to see that their neighbor is not someone who needs to be killed. That change, basically, root out the belief that their neighbor is someone to be killed. The option method would ask, why are you unhappy that you want to kill your neighbor? Now, eventually, pursuing that path through all the layers, one of two things are going to happen. Either the person's going to be like, realize that, oh, I want to kill my neighbor, and that's fine. And I don't want to act on it, and that's fine. Or they realize, oh, I don't really want to kill my neighbor, and that's fine. Or a third possibility, maybe they find out that, oh, I do want to kill my neighbor, and I actually want it enough that I'm happy to take the consequence of that of going to jail and being executed. In that case, a person may kill their neighbor, go to jail and be executed, but that's not a problem. I mean, that sort of person probably can do it anyway. But if someone really wants to do it, if someone is truly a sociopath, a violent sociopath, then they're a violent sociopath. So be it. And we as a society handle violent sociopaths how we handle it, but it just is what it is. So I think that's very dramatically different than cognitive behavioral therapy, where the final option would be considered completely verboten. We cannot have a violent sociopath deciding that their chosen path is to kill someone and then be executed. But the option method would actually be fine with that. The thing is, many people think they're violent sociopaths, but actually they're not. So 99% of people who came in with that point of view would realize that, oh, I'm not a violent sociopath. There's nothing to do here. There's no problem. I'm a guy who has fantasy about killing his neighbor and no desire to act on it. I can let be and move on in life.